Welcome to the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. All right, ready to dive deep into solution-focused approaches.
Always up for a deep dive, especially into something as cool as this.
Today, it's solution-focused brief therapy, SFBT. You heard of it?
Oh yeah, I mean, who isn't talking about SFBT these days?
Right, everywhere you look. And that's why we're tackling it head on. We've got a pretty dense textbook on SFBT, which is great for, like, the real nitty-gritty.
Oh, then have that foundation.
Totally. But we're also going beyond the textbook, you know. We got articles on how it's being used in classrooms, families, even with bullies.
Right.
Wild, right?
That's the beauty of SFBT. It really can go anywhere.
Our mission, if you want to call it that, is to give everyone listening a solid understanding of the core principles of SFBT.
Yeah.
And then we're going to see how those principles are actually being applied in all these different fields. So are you ready to, have your assumptions about problem-solving challenged?
Oh, you know I love a good challenge, especially one that makes me rethink things.
Well, strap in, because this is definitely one of those. The textbook starts by contrasting SFBT with that traditional problem-solving approach we all know. You know, like identify the problem, figure out the root cause, come up with a plan.
Classic, right. But sometimes maybe not so effective.
That's what SFBT is saying. It says, forget all that. Instead of dissecting what's wrong, let's find what's working and amplify it.
So it's not about dwelling on the problem, it's about focusing on solutions.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild? We're not even trying to define the problem, we're looking for solutions first.
I mean, think about it. Steve DeShazer, one of the pioneers of this whole thing, he observed that a lot of times clients already have a solution in mind even before they fully define the problem.
Whoa, hold on. So we're saying our brains are already wired for solutions even when we don't realize it.
It's like we're naturally drawn to what works.
That is a pretty optimistic way to look at things.
And that optimism is woven into the core principles of SFBT. One of the biggest ones, the client is the expert.
So it's not the therapist who knows everything.
Nope. It's recognizing that you, the person facing the challenge, you have the most valuable insights into your own life. Makes sense, right?
Right. So the therapist isn't like some all-knowing guru.
Not even close. Think of them more as a guide. They're there to help you uncover your own solutions, not impose their ideas on you. It's more of a partnership.
Now that's empowering, right? It's not about being fixed. It's about finding your own way forward with support.
And speaking of support, that leads us to another core principle, that laser focus on solutions. Forget dissecting what's wrong. Keep asking what's working. But more than that, how can we build on that?
Okay, so even when things are tough, there are always those little bits of hope to be found.
Oh, absolutely. Always. And those bits, those exceptions to the problem, that's where the real magic happens. SFBT really believes small steps lead to big change.
So it's about those baby steps building up to something huge.
Totally. It's like, imagine you're facing a mountain and it just seems, I don't know, impossible to climb.
Yeah, been there.
But what if you just break it down into smaller steps, manageable steps? Suddenly, the summit doesn't seem so far away.
It's about celebrating those small wins and using them as stepping stones. I like that.
That's what it's all about. Now, one thing the textbook mentions that I found super interesting is this idea, language creates reality. What do you make of that?
Okay, yeah, that one kind of threw me for a loop. What's that all about?
Well, it all ties into this thing called social constructionism, which is basically saying that the language we use, it shapes how we see the world, literally.
So the words we use are like lenses.
It's a perfect way to put it. The words we use are the lenses we're looking through. And in SFBT, therapists, they pay close attention to the words their clients use because it can tell them a lot about how they see themselves and their problems.
So if I'm always focusing on the negative and using language that's super negative, I'm more likely to just stay stuck.
It can definitely contribute to that feeling of being stuck. But by shifting the language to focus on solutions, on what's possible, you can actually shift your entire perspective.
So it's like changing our mental lenses to see a brighter picture.
Exactly. And that's where the real magic of SFBT lies. It's not just about fixing those surface level problems. It's about going deeper, changing the way we think and approach challenges at their very core.
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah.
So by literally just changing the way we talk about things, we can change how we experience them.
It's powerful stuff.
I am officially hooked. Now let's get into the actual techniques, the stuff that makes all of this happen.
Let's do it.
You know, one thing that I keep coming back to as we talk about SFBT is how it really puts the client front and center as the expert. That's a pretty big shift from how we usually think about therapy.
Oh, yeah, totally. SFBT gets that the person seeking help. They hold the key to their own solutions. I mean, who knows you better than you?
Right. So it's less about the therapist having all the answers and more about helping you find your own.
100%. The textbook talks about how therapists actually use the client's perspective as a guide. Like, they start by asking, what do you want to change?
Hmm.
And that naturally leads into, talking about the challenges you're facing.
Okay, so acknowledging the problem is part of it, but it's not the whole story.
It's just the beginning. The therapist accepts how you see the problem and then helps you shift gears towards solutions. And it's important they accept your perceptions as valid, even if they see things differently. Remember, you are the expert on your own life.
That's actually really validating, isn't it? Like, you don't have to convince them of your experience, you just feel heard and understood.
That's the foundation, feeling heard. And that understanding helps build a strong connection. And the therapist will ask about your experiences, both good and bad, like when was the problem less intense, or when did you feel more hopeful, or think about times you coped well.
It's like those moments are little treasure chests, huh? Filled with resilience we didn't even know we had.
Exactly, they hold clues. But one question I had was, what about people who don't choose therapy? Like those mandated by courts or social services. What about them?
Yeah, good point. I was wondering the same thing. It almost seems like SFBT wouldn't work if someone's not there by choice.
You might think that, but here's the thing. Even involuntary clients, they still have insights about their own lives.
Right?
They still have goals, even if those goals aren't the same as what the agency wants.
So how do therapists bridge that gap then?
By finding out what those goals are, and then figuring out how to help them reach those goals while still dealing with the agency's concerns. It's a balancing act. Like, imagine a teenager who's forced into therapy because, they got into some trouble.
I could see that.
The therapist might help them see that, hey, attending these sessions regularly, that could lead to more freedom, less oversight from the court. But that also helped them figure out their own dreams, like maybe finishing school, getting a job, and link that back to the therapy.
Okay, so it's like finding common ground between what the client needs and what the system's demanding.
That's it. Techniques like focusing on the relationship between the client and the agency, those can be really helpful. It's about helping the client understand the agency's perspective too, and, learning how to navigate that system successfully.
So good communication is essential in those situations.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where those open-ended questions come in. Instead of asking, why did you do that? It's more like, what was going on at that time? Remember, it's about working together, not against each other.
Can a therapist still use those techniques like the miracle question or focusing on exceptions, even with someone who's there involuntarily?
Totally. It's all about adapting. Think about it. Even if someone doesn't want to be there, envisioning a brighter future, remembering times when things were better, that can still be really powerful, right?
Yeah, I guess those techniques can be helpful no matter what. One thing I did wonder about as I was reading was, is this all a bit too simplistic? Like, is SFBT just about being positive and ignoring the negatives?
I hear you. That's a question a lot of people have. And it's important to know, SFBT is not about pretending everything's perfect. It's about being realistic, acknowledging the tough stuff, while still searching for solutions.
So more nuanced than just good vibes only.
Way more nuanced. The textbook really emphasizes that you got to do a thorough assessment first. You have to have well-defined goals.
So it's not just positive thinking. It's a real strategy, a plan you build together.
Absolutely. Those goals have to be specific, measurable, things you can actually achieve, relevant and time-bound. And there are a bunch of different techniques the therapist can use to help you get clear on those goals, like having a map with clear directions to where you want to go.
I like that. Another thing I was thinking about was, does SFBT acknowledge that, change can be tough and it takes time?
For sure it does. SFBT is not about quick fixes. It's about supporting you through the whole journey of change. And that journey, can be bumpy, but that support comes in many forms: compliments, gentle challenges, and guidance. Imagine your therapist saying, you've gone from a 3 to a 5 on your confidence scale this week. What did you do differently? What strengths helped you do that?
I can already feel myself getting motivated. It's like having a cheerleader who also helps you understand your moves and plan for the next game.
That's a great way to put it. The therapist is there to meet you where you are, adapting to your needs and your pace. And that's what makes SFBT so versatile. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. It's a framework that can be adjusted to so many different people and situations.
Speaking of different situations, we were talking about how SFBT is being used beyond traditional therapy settings. The articles you sent show that off so well.
One that really stuck with me was the WRWW program, using SFBT in schools.
I love that one.
YWW stands for Working on What Works, and it's all about making classrooms more positive, more respectful. Instead of focusing on what kids are doing wrong, they shine a light on what they're doing right.
Imagine a classroom where compliments are just as common as directions. Amazing.
Right. One teacher in the article said that just that one change, focusing on compliments, it had a huge impact on how willing her students were to participate and on their behavior overall.
Makes you think, what if we tried that in our workplaces? More compliments, better teamwork. Maybe worth a try, right?
Definitely. And WLWW doesn't stop there. They use techniques like scaling and goal setting to create a more positive learning environment. Students set goals, they track their progress, and then they celebrate their achievements. They're active in their own growth. It's awesome.
Yep. Empowering for both the teachers and the students. And that same kind of teamwork, it's in the Family Solutions program too. Using SFBT to help families work through challenges by focusing on what they're already good at, their resources.
Totally. That program understands families already have the tools for success. It's just about rediscovering those tools and, learning how to use them in a better way. There was that case study in one of the articles about Colin James. He was at risk of being placed outside of his home.
Oh, I remember that one. It was heartbreaking.
It was, but by shifting the focus from his behavior to what he needed to stay at home, the therapist was able to help him make some really positive changes.
So instead of focusing on what he was doing wrong, they focused on what he needed to thrive.
You got it. It's about finding solutions that work for everyone. And imagine the impact that has on a family. It's not just about keeping a kid at home, it's about strengthening the whole family.
Powerful stuff. Now, the article that really surprised me, I got to say, was the one about SFBT being used for a bullying intervention. I was not expecting that one.
It's pretty unique, right? Because instead of going after the bully, it focuses on giving the victim more power. So picture a child who's being bullied. SFBT helps them identify the times when they felt safe at school, happy, and what was happening during those times.
So it's like giving them tools to cope and build resilience.
It is. It's about helping them create a more positive experience at school, no matter what the bully's doing. And that, might actually make them less of a target in the long run.
Almost like they're building a shield of positivity.
Exactly. And then there was that last article about SFBT in the criminal justice system. How did you feel about that one?
Honestly, I was curious how that even works.
Right. So this was about a restorative justice program in Hawaii. They use SFBT to help bring inmates and their loved ones back together to reconcile. Instead of focusing on past wrongs, it's about rebuilding those relationships and learning to communicate better.
And it actually worked.
There was this quote from an inmate in the article. He talked about how much the program changed him. He learned to really listen and to express himself more positively. It gave him hope for a future with his family, a healthy future.
It's amazing, all these examples. It's incredible how SFBT can work, even in places you wouldn't expect.
It's a testament to how powerful this approach really is. So we've seen it transforming classrooms, helping families thrive, empowering victims of bullying, and even bringing reconciliation in the criminal justice system. Pretty impressive, right?
It really is. It makes you wonder, what other areas could benefit from focusing on solutions like this? What are we missing by just fixating on the problems?
It's wild, right? Thinking about all these ways SFBT is being used really makes you question those basic assumptions about, how we solve problems, almost like it flips everything we thought we knew on its head. It definitely challenges the status quo. And, one of the things that fascinates me most about SFBT is how it says, hey, you don't always need to dissect the problem before looking for solutions. Sometimes focusing on the solution first can actually give you a better understanding of the problem. Crazy, huh?
It's like working backwards,
Yeah.
right? Starting with the goal and figuring out how to get there instead of getting bogged down in all the reasons why things are messed up in the first place.
Exactly. And you know what? That shift in perspective can be incredibly freeing. Instead of feeling totally overwhelmed by the problem, we can start exploring possibilities, experimenting with different solutions. It's like discovering a whole new toolkit for dealing with challenges.
And that experimentation piece is key, isn't it? Because SFBT isn't about finding the one perfect answer. It's about being open to options, seeing what sticks.
That's it. There are so many different paths to a solution, and SFBT gets that. What works for one person might not work for another. It's all about finding what resonates with you, what fits your situation, and that's why the client's expertise is so important.
Something keeps coming back to me from the textbook, this idea that language shapes reality. It's kind of radical. when you think about it.
It is, and it's a core principle of social constructionism, which, is a big part of the foundation for SFBT. The words we use, they don't just describe our experiences, they actually shape those experiences. Think about it. If you're always focused on the negative, using language that reinforces those negative thoughts, it's going to be way harder to see the good stuff, to feel any hope.
So if I'm always telling myself I mess things up, I'm actually making it more likely that I'll keep messing things up.
It can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the good news is, if you can make an effort to change your language, to focus on solutions, on what could be, even if it feels weird at first, you can start to change how you see yourself and your situation. It's like trading in a soundtrack of negativity for something more uplifting and hopeful.
I love that analogy. It's like we're creating a whole new story for ourselves, one
Right.
where we're the heroes, not the victims.
And that's what I find so empowering about SFBT. It's not just about changing what we do, it's about changing how we think, how we talk to ourselves. And that shift in thinking, it can have a huge impact on every area of our lives.
So we've talked about all these different techniques, like the miracle question, focusing on solutions. But one thing that really stood out to me in the textbook was the emphasis on exceptions to the problem. It seems so simple, yet so powerful.
Right. It's all about highlighting those times, even if they were brief, when the problem wasn't as bad. Those exceptions, they're like little nuggets of gold. They show us your strengths, your resources. They tell us what works, even if it's not working all the time.
So instead of trying to figure out why the problem is there, we're looking for proof that things can be different.
Exactly. And the key is to really dig into those exceptions. What made that time different? Were you doing something different? Were other people acting differently? What strengths did you draw on? By understanding what contributed to those exceptions, we can start to figure out how to make them happen more often.
It's like being a detective trying to solve a case. But the case is how to create more of those good times.
I love that. And speaking of uncovering clues, another tool that SFBT therapists use is scaling questions. They use a simple scale, usually 0 to 10, to gauge your sense of progress or how confident you feel about reaching your goals. And what's cool about scaling questions is that they let you define progress on your own terms. There's no judgment, no comparing yourself to others. It's all about your own experience.
So no pressure to meet someone else's standards, just focusing on my own progress, celebrating those wins, even the small ones.
You got it. And those little wins can add up to big changes over time. Scaling questions also help you see when your confidence is fluctuating and figure out what might be causing those ups and downs. It's like having a built-in mood tracker.
So much insight from such a simple tool. As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm realizing that SFBT is more than just a bunch of techniques. It's like a whole new approach to life's challenges, an approach that emphasizes hope, possibilities, and, that incredible power we all have to create positive change.
Beautifully said. I think that's what makes SFBT so appealing. It's a philosophy that respects your knowledge, highlights your strengths, and encourages you to see yourself as the author of your own story. At its heart, it believes that everyone has the potential to create a better, happier future for themselves.
And that belief, it's incredibly empowering, especially when we're going through tough times. So if you're ever feeling stuck, overwhelmed by a problem, I challenge you to try on those solution-focused glasses. Ask yourself, what's working, even just a little bit? What are my strengths, even those I've forgotten about? And what small step can I take today to get closer to where I want to be? You might be surprised by what you discover when you change your perspective.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Remember, even the longest journey starts with a single step. Keep those solution-focused lenses on, stay curious, and keep exploring the possibilities. Until next time.
See you next time on the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. Until next time.
See you then.